And I'm going to make sure this is recording. Always something I need to remember to do. So perfect. So we'll walk through. When we were designing this, we're not going to go through itinerary specific. We're going to go through the destinations and the experiences because they are varied. And hopefully, for those of you attending and watching this, can get a thought for, wow, that really spoke to me. I love that experience. I love that destination. And then you can work with Truewander to help design and curate that perfect Africa safari for you. So we will go to the next slide. And here's a couple things we're going to cover today. So the different regions, as I mentioned, safari types, wildlife by region. I get a lot of questions about that. I want to see this animal. I want to see the big five. Where do I do that? What time of year should I go? What activities are unique by region? What does a day in the life of a safari look like? And Simon can certainly talk through that. And then if it's my first time on safari, what are some of the best areas and where should I go with my family? Or maybe I have a multi-gen trip coming up. So, Simon, any other thoughts on this overview before we jump into some of the destinations?
No, I think you've somewhat nailed it, Sally. And again, what we're going to kind of try to focus on today is how do we pick the perfect trip to Africa? It can be again quite daunting. Africa is another continent and it is a long way away. So sometimes when it comes to people, obviously they're going to lean heavily on Truewander and of course myself to kind of help them. So today, one of the main purposes of the call is to kind of how do we pick and how do we kind of get you going to the right destination?
Perfect. So I will start with the first spot with Botswana. Simon, what are your thoughts on Botswana?
Do you know, it's kind of funny, guys, because a lot of people will ask me what the Mecca is, and Botswana definitely would be sort of top of that list. It's a safari destination that over the years has become sort of the go-to, and the reason behind it is it's it's an intimate safari, but still feels that very untouched Africa. So, for some of you that might know, it does have an area called the Okavango Delta. And the uniqueness behind the Okavango Delta, it gives you the opportunity to do land and water based safari. And why is that, may you ask? It's because up on the Angolan border, each year, the two rivers kind of spill over into Botswana and they flood the region known as the Okavango Delta. So while certain times of year the area will run dry, come sort of late February into sort of July and some parts of August, this area will fill up with water, which kind of opens it up to kind of sort of waterways that you can go on and you can hop on canoes and sort of cruise down the river with an experienced guide and sort of see the likes of elephants and other animals from such a different kind of standpoint. So again, for me, having traveled to Botswana many times, it's just again, it's just an eye opener as to how beautiful nature can actually be. Going to Africa, what is the main purpose? It's safari. It's to see animals. That's what you're there for. And once you go to Botswana, there's no doubt that you're going to have an experience every single day. And to talk a little bit about safari experience and what each day entails, I think it's still a little bit of a gray area to a lot of clients. And, in Botswana, again, getting up in the morning early, out on a safari vehicle, exploring for roughly 3, 4 hours, looking for animals, up trees, through, again, the bush of Africa, and coming back in the afternoon to kind of, again, hop on a boat or a canoe and just sort of sail around these sort of waterways. What a magnificent time to kind of really separate yourself and be at one with nature. So yes, Botswana definitely high up on the list. Obviously on the southern Africa side, when it comes to Africa, it is the most expensive, Sally, if I can put it there. It's where what most call it the highest end properties are. And the reason behind that is because of the experience. When you go there, you definitely are going to have the an amazing safari experience.
Absolutely. And Simon, I was just going to mention that I know a lot of the safari lodges and accommodations are smaller and more intimate in Botswana as well, which of course there might be on the higher end as far as pricing, but also probably need to be booked farther in advance because the
Yeah,
inventory is tighter.
yeah, that's a very good question, Isili, because when it comes to safari, people also how far in advance. We've seen the trend change over the years, where in the past, most people would book 8 to 10 months, 8 to 12 months out. When it comes to festive season, we always kind of say, take 12 months because everything sort of fills up. But because the camps are so small and intimate, some properties in Botswana only have 4 rooms, to give you an example. So to avoid disappointment, yes, 10 to 12 months for kind of what we call the busier seasons. And what are the busier seasons in Botswana? That would be anywhere from late June, July, and August, because as I mentioned, that is when the delta is at its fullest from a water standpoint. And then going into festive, Africa is very seasonal, and certain times of years, of course, like I mentioned, can be drier, especially up in Botswana. Then you have certain times of year where it's full in terms of the water levels. Then you have green seasons where it rains, and now summer rains in Africa happen most parts of Africa from November through January. And when it comes to Africa, that can affect the rates in terms of the accommodations that you take. So again, me as the Africa expert with my team will direct your client, Sally, in terms of best time of year. There is no bad time, as I mentioned at the start. It's just kind of setting your expectations and talking you through the experience.
That's perfect. And then the festive, we use that term quite a lot in the industry. That's really travel over the holidays, over New Year's. Very popular times to be together with family. So planning in advance is key. Um, Fantastic. So that was a great chat through Botswana. I have next up South Africa, which I think what my biggest takeaway is that there's so many varied activities here and so much to offer. So, and I know you were recently there, so I would love to get your thoughts on this destination.
Yeah, I hope I never sound biased when I talk about South Africa, but it truly is just an amazing country. And, we've had a turbulent past back in the early 90s and obviously prior to that, I should say. But over the years, just grown in stature when it comes to best city in the world in regards to Cape Town. Just picturesque from every sort of angle. Cuisine is now sort of at the highest, where they're comparing us to the likes of Paris, etc. So what does South Africa give you? South Africa gives you the luxury of the beautiful city of Cape Town. We have wineries there, somewhat like you would think of Napa and Sonoma. But again, being extremely biased, I'd say ours are kind of, again, feel sort of more like you're in another country when you're in the winelands region. So as Sally mentioned, when you go to Cape Town, activities, because there's so much to do. You have one of the world's natural wonders in Table Mountain. Again, the restaurant scene is absolutely booming. So to kind of cram all this into a 4-day period, again, people get so excited. So what we try to do is, again, pinpoint the sort of main areas. You see that little photo there of the penguins. Yes, Africa does have penguins, and we kind of send your clients off to go have a look at them down the Cape Point and Peninsula route. And every part of the drive when it comes to sort of South Africa and especially the Western Cape, where Cape Town is just absolutely magnificent, because you've got the ocean on one side and then you've got all the mountain ranges on the other. So a perfect kind of itinerary would be kind of to arrive probably into Johannesburg or Cape Town. Johannesburg, unfortunately, has always kind of, because it's inland, somewhat like Atlanta, I guess, it doesn't really get a lot of traction. But for those that really love history and want to learn about South Africa's past, great place to be. Cape Town, of course, again, you could pop over to Cape Town, spend 4, 5, 6, 7 nights, at a minimum there, and kind of not feel bored. And again, we have some safari lodges up in the Kruger National Park area, up in the Eastern Cape of South Africa and the Northwest Province. So, with South Africa, you get to tick all those boxes. And one thing that clients need to know is that the rate of exchange when it comes to South Africa always plays in your favor. Every other country throughout Africa charges in US dollars. Well, throughout Southern and East Africa, I should say. South Africa still charges in South African rand. It is extremely volatile. It's extremely weak against the kind of US dollar. So your money goes so much further when you travel to South Africa. The nice thing again about South Africa, and we go back to Botswana, is you compare the two. Southern Africa, the maximum flight time that you're going to have to go to any country is 2.5, 3 hours. So what we normally like to do is to kind of give a full South Africa experience. And then for those clients that have a little bit more time, hop over to Botswana. Why not 2.5 hours to see two countries whilst you're on the continent? Maximize your time, maximize the magic. So yeah, coming back from South Africa recently blows me away every time. The weather was just phenomenal. A lot of the North American market will travel June, July, August. Of course, that's when the holiday season kind of is, and of course our summer here. Total reverse in regards to seasons because South Africa moves into winter. Now, is it cold? Nowhere near a Chicago, nowhere near a Philly or a Boston. The days, they're very kind of 75-ish, 80. Mornings chilly, evenings chilly, especially in Cape Town and on safari. But again, takes you away from that kind of, especially coming from Florida, that bold, dry, humid heat. So yeah, we find a lot of people don't worry about the seasons, and yeah, again, June, July, August peak festive season, again, very popular time in South Africa.
I love how you've described it because I think pairing it with Botswana is fantastic because the activities are so varied. And I also like how you're kind of encouraging don't just come in and out of Cape Town or don't just fly in and then get on your way. There's so much to see in the area and really experience, and then start, to your point, short flights to other parts of Africa to really
Mhm.
experience. Um,
It's one of those things, Sally, I say is, we talk the term cookie cutter. I don't deal with group trips. We curate the experience from the beginning by you speaking to your client, picking their brains, getting their likes, their dislikes. And based on that information that we receive, we put that trip together to ensure that every time we send a client of yours to Africa, it's the trip of a lifetime.
100%. And that's doubling down on what we do at Truewander 100%. So everything is tailored towards you for any of these custom made trips, which is fantastic. Next up on the list, we have Tanzania. A lot of the photos from Tanzania are, I think, iconic photos that people see throughout their lifetime and think about safari. So would love to get your thoughts specifically on the migration and when that is, and Kilimanjaro, and just some of the absolute beauty that is Tanzania. And then I think the safari experience is going to be a little different too than Botswana and South Africa. So would love for your insight on that.
Yeah, 100%. The word great migration, you'll hear that word numerous times or we have heard that word numerous times in our travel careers. And that one picture there shows it exactly what it's for. It's a migration of wildebeest and zebra year on year. What do? They move through the likes of Tanzania to normally around late June into July and August. And what are they doing? What is their intention? They're moving from Tanzania to move more over to Kenya for the lush sort of grass, water, etc. So this is something that happens year on year. Historically, it used to happen in kind of middle of July, late July. Now it's kind of like stemmed into kind of August. But if your focus is just safari, if you have no sort of, you know, you just want to go to Africa and animals is your main sort of concern, and then East Africa and Tanzania would be the kind of area for you. We normally pair Tanzania with Kenya. And we try again to give sort of clients the opportunity of seeing the herds, because remember, even though the migration moves throughout the year, the main crossing is in July, as I mentioned, in August. So there's other times of years that you might see those large pockets of animals sort of moving. But a true spectacle when it comes to kind of safari in general in Tanzania. It has a whole host of national parks. And the Serengeti is probably in my top three and most people's top three when it comes to game viewing. There was always a funny sort of comment that there's a predator on every corner up in the Serengeti and the Masai Mara in Kenya. And it's somewhat a true statement, because during the course of your day, for the most part, you're always going to see one of the predators. And, we talk about watching animals hunt and all things like that. Opportunity up in these parts are rife. And outside of safari, you see Kilimanjaro and Mount Maru is there as well for the more adventurous that kind of want to hike. It's something that's become pretty popular now with the more active sort of crowd. So you can combine a good hike with safari in Tanzania. But yeah, it's a magnificent sort of area, mostly tented accommodation, again, small, intimate in terms of the safari experience. One thing to know, the peak season does bring in a lot of traffic. And why might that be? It is a national park. I think you heard me mention that kind of name, national park. What is a national park? Well, a national park is like you would have here in the United States. You could drive up, myself and Sally could hop in the car today, drive to a national park, pay the gate entrance fee, and off we go. That happens in these parts. And sometimes during peak season, there can be a lot of traffic moving around these national parks. So, again, very important to know that. Will it affect you as a client going for the first time? Absolutely not. We're more picky, myself and Sally, because this is our job. This is our kind of industry. So, we'll be sure to tell you what to expect whilst you're in Tanzania. The kind of, again, we call them shoulder seasons, i.e., March, April, May. Then we move kind of September, October. What happens then? Yes, the weather changes somewhat, but the crowds go away a little bit. So if you're into that more sort of intimate safari experience, you would stay away from the peak of July and August. But again, our job to kind of explain that to you, to set the expectations before you arrive.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you explained it really well that, and we're going to go on to Kenya next and kind of round out for this webinar, but really good explanation of those different experiences, the bigger national parks, but this classic look, this classic safari experience, whereas in South Africa and Botswana, it's going to be a little bit smaller. And would it be fair to say not as much national park, some national park, but also maybe some private land as well?
Yeah, and without kind of obviously really delving into the differences with concessions and national parks. But yes, Sally, 100% right. It's more of an intimate safari within the Southern Africa regions because we try not avoid national parks, but a lot of private sort of reserves within South Africa and Botswana, which means, again, only those vehicles that are at the property, i.e. 4 or 5 of them, are allowed to traverse within that region. So what does that do? Again, it feels like it's you in the safari, as opposed to going to a national park where you're seeing 20, 30, 400 vehicles in peak season. So again, these are factors and things that you might not know that we'll educate you on before curating that trip to Africa for you.
Perfect. And then rounding out with Kenya, which I know you touched a little bit on this, pairing it with Tanzania, but would love your thoughts on this destination as well.
Yeah, there's a lot when it comes to Kenya. For some, number one, the Masai Mara National Reserve kind of can tick a box when it comes to every sort of animal. You, of course, see that gentleman jumping quite high up there. He's part of the Masai. So from a cultural standpoint, again, amazing. From a city, Nairobi is on the rise. Nairobi has kind of started to boom in regards to, again, cuisine, fashion, local sort of art, all things like that, that the American market really enjoys. So whereas in the past we would kind of do maybe one quick overnight in Nairobi, now we've extended to 2, 3 nights. But again, the main purpose and the main focus of going to Kenya is the safari. So that is where the Great Migration is seen at its kind of fullest on the Masai side, and the Masai Mara, I should say. So if you're positioned anywhere kind of beginning to mid-August, you are going to have a great opportunity of seeing those kind of wildebeest and zebra, 1 million plus, trying to kind of cross the rivers over into the Kenya side. So, yeah, for me, again, having around, test my knowledge, roughly 56 national parks, I think. We only sort of hand select a few when it comes to experience. And for the main reason itself, we know what it delivers. And if you are going to go all the way to East Africa, as I mentioned, I'm probably going to combine Kenya and Tanzania. They are two sort of countries that are right next to each other. If you had to go from point A to point B, i.e. Nairobi, into Kilimanjaro, you're looking at a 15-minute flight. So again, why would you not combine the two? But yeah, going all the way to East Africa, we would normally kind of say stay around 10 nights, and then we would pair up the Masai Mara, we would pair up the Serengeti, and kind of add in maybe 1 or 2 extra stops. But yeah, from a game viewing perspective, again, definitely very high up on the game viewing charts.
Yeah, fantastic. And I think what one of the big takeaways that we wanted to convey today is that, there's so many options, and we're just kind of talking about a small few areas. But figuring out what you love, what's important to you, who your travel companion, your family, whatever it is. And then I work with obviously fantastic partners like Simon to create the journey for you, create the logistics, make sure that you can just show up and be immersed in the experience and not worry about how you're getting from one place to the other, because it's all taken care of for you and it's curated exactly for you. Um, Perfect. And I think, if just a quick reminder, if anyone does have any questions, toss them in the chat box as we kind of wrap up our time here today. And let me just ask you this, Simon, for, let's
Yeah.
say, family travel, what's a good age for to take children on an African safari? What's your thought?
Do you know what? Nowadays, great question, Cindy, but you can, kids of all ages can travel. In the past, a lot of people would always want to wait for their kids to be kind of 7, 8 years old. We always say your first memory happens in and around those times. But for your more adventurous traveler that wants to be out, wants to explore, the child service, or the nannies in South Africa, we like to call them, are absolutely world class. You won't feel you'd feel like your kid would not want to come back to you because they just are so well looked after. So again, for that family that wants to travel festive season, they've got 1 and 2 year old, a 5 and a 6 year old. We can position them at the right properties to ensure that mom and dad can at least have a little bit of downtime, and of course the kids are happy. So there are certain camps that will be 12 and up, but again, with South Africa and Africa as a whole becoming such a huge tourist destination, we now cater for all ages.
Fantastic. And then I did have a question come through. Really, the accommodations can be everything from, maybe a type of a resort property to luxury under canvas, to your point, for rooms in Botswana. But what's the best way to help find what travelers are going to like the most versus some of those more rustic options to some of the more luxury options? Any thoughts you have on finding that right accommodation?
Yeah, yeah, and again, it's about kind of again finding out what the clients like, where they've traveled to in the past. It's South Africa can be done in many different ways. Luxury can be seen in many different ways. But again, with those questions that we ask the clients will kind of help us curate that experience, because I always say a good high-end 4 star in South Africa can feel like a 5 star for another part of the world. So, for me, I always give my 2 cents when it comes to kind of properties. I would never sort of put clients in an area where I haven't personally seen or someone hasn't personally seen, because for me, it's extremely important to have tried the product. So yeah, again, based on the questions that we ask the clients, we'll ensure that we kind of get them in the right properties, because the next thing we send someone to Tanzania and they arrive and they're in a tent and they go, oh my gosh, we didn't expect this. Now, when we talk tent, think glamping. I hate the word glamping, but we'll have to use it here just for sort of reference. And the tent is probably as nice as most people's bedrooms and 3 times the size. So, we again have to make sure that we explain that to clients, and we do. We give you full itineraries that are very, again, visual. Breaks down the day to day, breakdowns the pickups, the timings. People get nervous when they go to Africa, and why not? It's almost a day flight away. It's another continent they've never been. You can't picture it in your head till you've actually been there. And it's like I said, once you get there and experience the magic, that's why you want to go back. But we'll ensure that we put that trip together based on the information that we receive from the clients to ensure that there's no sticker shock or horrors when they get to destination.
Absolutely. And I do think it is kind of an investment destination, but to your point, one that stays with you forever, and really is just quite special and quite unique. Um,
I,
this, Go ahead.
oh, sorry. I see a question that came through. It just popped up. It's about the gorillas, and that's something that we didn't kind of talk about. Obviously, probably another whole conversation. But Silly, you can combine East Africa pretty well with Rwanda and Uganda. Rwanda is more the the kind of high end sort of destination when it comes to sort of the gorilla tracking sort of side of things. But a hop, skip, and a jump away from Serengeti, roughly around an hour flight, and that's Tanzania. And same thing for Kenya. So you could go on your safari, do all the national parks, and kind of get the safari piece out the way, and then hop over to Rwanda to kind of go tracking with the gorillas, or vice versa, Uganda. So yes, it is on the East Africa side. So from a logistical sort of standpoint, much easier to do it whilst traveling in East Africa. Can you do it if you kind of in South Africa and combine it? Yeah, sure, but it will enforce some overnights along the way. But anything's possible with Africa. I've had the luxury of doing the gorilla track twice in the last kind of 2 years. It is an experience that you'll definitely put high up on your bucket list to tick that one off. And it is amazing. It's a life-changing experience. I never thought I'd use that word, but it most definitely is. And again, if there is something that you'd like to kind of entertain, we can do that for you too.
That's perfect. And I
And
see, oh, go ahead, Simon.
no, I keep seeing these questions shoot out, and again, that's a great question. So the thing again, I always say is, how much safari is too much safari, silly? Because when you go to these places, early start in the morning, out on safari, back to the lodge, then you follow suit for 10 days. It can get kind of taxing, and especially if you're going to hop over to the likes of Rwanda and Uganda to do the track. There is different tracking levels, i.e., you can do kind of the simple what we like to call track, but we also can't sort of tell you where the gorillas are going to be. So whilst someone might say, well, we've spotted the gorillas at the kind of base of the mountain at volcanoes, you could take a walk there and the gorillas could have moved. So for some folk that have mobility issues, etc., we can actually carry you on a stretcher for the most part, and that's happened to a few of our guests. And the nice thing there is as well, we have guides with you. So they carry your bags, they carry your jackets, they carry your water. So all you have to focus on is getting to the gorillas and taking pictures. So Uganda is probably the easier track in terms of kind of the less steepness. But Rwanda, again, would I say one is better than the other? It would be wrong for me to say, but I am a big fan of kind of the Volcanoes National Park. It can be a little bit kind of taxing when it comes to weather if it rains a lot. But for the most part, I haven't had a difficult track. I've had a long track, but I've never had a client come back, and that's of all ages, saying that that just wasn't for them. I think the excitement takes over. And as long as we, again, pass that knowledge through in regards to kind of your mobility, your level of fitness, et cetera, we'll make sure that we tick those boxes.
Yeah, I love the questions. And we were just talking about, depending on the feedback from this, we might even do some additional sessions. There's Namibia, of course, there's Uganda, Rwanda. There's so many places that you can go a little bit deeper on. But Simon, I want to say a huge thank you to you. I hope anyone that attended or is watching this sees the incredible expertise that you and your team have. And you're in great hands when we design your safari and your Africa adventure together. So thank you so much, Simon, for being here. And thank you for everyone that attended and is watching this. And please reach out so we can create something magical for you on safari and within Africa.
Such a pleasure. Thank you so much, guys. And yeah, let's get booking some Africa trips. So Sally, thank you so much. Absolute pleasure seeing you again, and we'll chat soon.
Sounds good. Take care, everyone.
Bye, guys.